We're 4 weeks away from the season opener, and the Boston Bruins don't have a captain. For a franchise like this isn't just unusual. This is alarming, truly. It's the first time in 24 years they haven't had a captain. That's when they begrudgingly gave it to their best player, Joe Thornton. And look at how that turned out, right? Don Sweeney was grilled about it on the golf course yesterday. Here's what the GM had to say about his team entering the season without a captain.
Not naming a C, or is naming one still on the table?
Well, everything's on the table. Right now, we've been forward with everybody and honest with everybody that we're going to start without it. You know, we've got a leadership group that's been meeting amongst themselves, and I think eventually somebody will emerge as the guy that should be the next captain. It comes with a lot of responsibility. So I'd like to see a little more organic, natural progression of it, rather than just, you know, with a new coach, and, you know, having management or somebody. I just think those two things, you know, if one does it without everybody being on the same page, it can become awkward. I think now we just move forward with the leadership group that's going to be established, and let Marco, you know, have his own communication with them, and let them have communication with themselves in terms of what direction they want to take this team, and who emerges as the ultimate leader and the next captain of the Boston Bruins.
So this is really interesting because he talks about, you know, wanting it to be natural. First off, we'll get to that in a second. But he talks about not wanting it to be awkward. And I'm thinking, why would it be awkward? There's usually not an awkward process to picking a captain. That means you don't want to pick between these two. Awkward if one person thinks this and one person thinks the other. Really, the players should be picking the captain. But in most cases, the coach picks the captain. What Don Sweeney is saying there, why he doesn't want it to be awkward, is because Don Sweeney wants to pick the captain. Just like he wants to pick all the assistant coaches, just like he wants to pick which players are playing in Boston, which are playing in Providence, and which are watching on the ninth floor. Don Sweeney tries to put more control over a team than pretty much any other GM in the league. Certainly more than any other successful GM in the league. That's why it's awkward. For every other team, it won't be awkward. And also, isn't this really weird to hear that someone will emerge as the next captain? Like, in a vacuum, a team going into a season without a captain, especially one with a new coach, not that huge a deal. It happens. There are teams every year that have it, although I think the Bruins might be the only one right now other than the Ducks. So, like, that does happen from time to time. But this situation is weird because you're coming off still, you know, almost 2 decades straight of success, and with a pretty direct lineage to where you're at today, right? In leadership anyway, with Chara to the Krejci Bergeron, Marchand, and then you should be picking between one of these two guys. Someone will emerge as the next captain, is what your GM is telling you. Charlie McAvoy is entering year 9 with this team. David Pastrnak is entering year 11 with this team. They both played with Chara, Bergeron, and Marchand. The last 3 captains. They've played under and with all of them. And some people think the whole, you know, captain in pro sports thing is hokey. And fine. But this really concerns me about the future of the franchise. The last 3 captains were the guys who laid the foundation for arguably one of the greatest eras in Bruins hockey. And the guys playing alongside them with the A's on their sweaters can't step in and fill that role? Really? Or you can't pick one of them? This is another perfect example of why the Bruins need to rebuild, not retool. This is the example right here. They have no identity. None. They aren't tough. They don't score. They're not defensively sound. And apparently, they have no leadership. The train was coming off the tracks last year. But how dare you ever question Brad Marchand? Team icon, great friends with Bergeron. Of course he's the captain. Huh. David Pastrnak, team icon, great friends with Bergeron. Well, he can't be captain. Charlie McAvoy, same thing. There's nothing there. There's no identity to this franchise right now. And the last time the Bruins had an identity crisis like this, they had to trade their best player, a future Hall of Famer in Joe Thornton, just to get some leadership in the room, just to establish an identity again. Whether you believe the Joe Thornton trade was good or not, that's why they had to do it. And look, he was captain of the Sharks for years, and they were a team that underachieved for a long time. That's a lack of leadership. Joe Thornton's probably a better hockey player than Zdeno Chara. Chara was a better captain. Mike Modano was a better player than Darian Hatcher. But who was the captain of that team that led them to success? And this makes me really concerned that the Bruins are heading down the same path again right now. Because my vote for who should be the captain is the best player on the team. A guy who is a terrific offensive player, who has at times struggled in the postseason, much like Joe Thornton. And maybe this is them trying to not make the same mistake twice. Because I do think David Pastrnak is a obviously tremendous player, even underrated player in this league. And I thought he showed good on-ice leadership last year. Like, things were going to hell in a handbasket, and he was not making any excuses. He did his job more than any other Bruin has single-handedly done ever. I mean, the franchise record with 13 straight goal involvements, right? For 13 straight Bruins goals, Pastrnak either assisted or scored them. Like, I think that's genuine leadership. And if it's not one of those guys that's been here for a decade, should we be looking at someone else? Should we be looking at a Nikita Zadorov, who stunk at times last year, right? Took a lot of penalties. I think he led the league in penalties. But would stand up for his teammates. Would fight the guys when the time was right, when they needed somebody to step in. I mean, beat the shit out of Jamie Benn after he tried to kill Brandon Carlo last year. And again, it might sound like a hokey thing. Oh, you got to have a great captain to lead these grown men. But two things are true. You completely fell apart last year after your captain was traded. And B, teams without a captain are typically not good. They're not good. Like, that's just proof is in the pudding, man. There were 6 teams in the NHL that did not have a captain last year. Okay? Tampa was one of them. They finished 7th. They were the only ones that made the playoffs. Anaheim finished 25th. Buffalo finished 26th. Seattle finished 27th. Utah finished 19th. And Chicago finished 31st in the league standings. That's the kind of company you're keeping when you don't have a captain. Like, that's just what it is. And Tampa is the odd man out. Their captain left in free agency. They've had the same coach, very successful coach in place for almost a decade and a half. They actually have 2 guys in Victor Hedman and Nikita Kucherov, and maybe even an Andrei Vasilevsky, who have had leadership roles in the past, and they're okay with that because they continue to be good. They're a good, talented team. The Bruins aren't. And they're not willing to pick between Pastrnak and McAvoy, but those guys also have not won the Stanley Cup. Victor Hedman and Nikita Kucherov have both won the Stanley Cup multiple times. Hedman's won a Conn Smythe. Andrei Vasilevsky's won a Conn Smythe. So the Bruins are much more in the middle of these other teams than they are with Tampa. In fact, the teams that finished 25th, 26th, and 27th didn't have captains. The team that finished 28th was the Boston Bruins. Oh, and to take it a step further, Anaheim hasn't had a captain since Getzlaf retired in 2022. And in those years, they have finished 25th, 32nd, and 30th. Chicago, 31st, an absolute mess, man. Which of those teams that I just named, other than the Tampa Bay Lightning, would you switch places with? Any of them? There's a common thread between 5 of these 6 teams that didn't have a captain last year. They all suck. They don't make the playoffs. In most cases, they're one of the absolute worst teams in the league. Buffalo, Seattle, Chicago, they're dumpster fires, man. Like we're laughing at them even sitting in 28th. Seattle was better than you. And they can't get any decision right. Like that, they cannot pick anybody in that franchise. Who are the 25-26 Boston Bruins closer to? The Tampa Bay Lightning or Seattle and Buffalo? You finished behind all three of those teams last year. Let's be real here. I'll take it even another step further. Out of the 80 teams, 80, out of the 80 teams that have made the Stanley Cup playoffs the last 5 years, 4 of them did not have a captain. 4 of 80. 1 in every 20 is not going to have a captain. That's how rare this is. One team in the last decade has made the conference finals without a captain. This is concerning. It's really concerning for the short-term and long-term future of this franchise that 2 guys who have been 2 of your best players for going on a decade now cannot separate themselves. 2 guys who have not only been 2 of your best players, but have been alternate captains the last 2 seasons. The longest tenured players on their team cannot separate themselves as leaders. That's really concerning to me. You're going into this year with a clueless GM, a minor league coach, and no defined leader in that locker room. Are you really feeling good about that? Like, I've done segments before, and I do think there are ways that the Bruins can make the playoffs. I've always said a lot needs to go right. But, like, if I just lay it out to you like that, and tell me if there's something wrong, if I've said anything incorrect. You're going into this year without a clueless GM, or you're going into this year with a clueless GM, a minor league coach, and no defined leader in the locker room. Does that make you feel good about the Bruins? Has anything in this offseason made you feel good about the Bruins? Anything that's tangibly happened? Not just what one guy says, not what Jeremy Swayman says, not about what Marco Sturm's interview press conference sounds like. I'm talking moves, development, anything that makes you feel great. Like with this leadership group they have right now, Marco Sturm, a first-time NHL coach, and then a bunch of guys. Do you think that's going to turn Jeremy Swayman around? The guy's referring to himself in the third person now. You think the guy might need a leader? A little kick in the ass in the locker room? Maybe get him to be an all-star goalie again? Don't think you're getting that. Do you think that leadership group is going to bring the defensive structure that you will need to win games and be in the playoff hunt? You think that's going to make a real disciplined team? Do you think this leadership group will show these prospects, on some of them with their last chance to prove themselves in the NHL, how to play in the NHL? This is a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. And I know I'm usually doom and gloom about the Don Sweeney Bruins, but I really think this is a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. It's just another example of this franchise being completely directionless right now. Rudderless, directionless, whatever you want to call it. They don't have strong leadership from the top down. And I'm not talking about just the locker room. I'm talking about the ownership group, to the general manager, to the president, to the head coach, and then to the guys in the locker room. I mean, shoot, we can go continuity everywhere else, right? We can keep the same assistant coaches. We can even just bring the broadcaster from the radio to TV, but we can't name a captain. We can't have these guys who have been on the team for a decade. Neither of them could be a captain. That's scary, man. That's frightening for 2 guys who are in their prime, and we're sitting here being like, don't waste McAvoy and Pasternak's prime. If they can't step up and one of them be a captain of the team, maybe they're wasting their own goddamn prime. Really what this is, it's just another example of how they won't commit to anything. Nothing, man. They don't commit to anything. Like, seriously. I go back to this. Cam Neely at the end of the season press conference says, yeah, this is a real prove-it offseason for Don Sweeney. And what do, man? before he does anything, before he drafts anybody, before he signs anybody, before he even hires a fucking coach, they extend him. Well, Cam, they extended him. That's a commitment. No, it's not. They extended him for 2 years, literally the least amount that you could extend the general manager. That's not committing to anything. He won't even say the term rebuild, even though that's exactly what this team needs. They won't commit to that either. They won't commit to a GM. They won't commit to a coach because they're not going to let him bring in his own staff. They're not going to commit to their prospects because these guys don't play enough in the NHL and don't play good NHL minutes and don't play with good NHL players. They don't commit to anything, man. Anything. They just expect the wheels to keep on turning because they were pretty good in the 2010s. Remember that? Let's just keep on spinning the wheels here. Commit to something, man. If you were committing to be a better team this year, you would have signed some guys who could put the goddamn puck in the net, but you didn't do that. You wanted to get tougher. I don't know what the fuck that's committing to, but it's committing to the wrong thing. And if you were committing to the goodness of the future of your franchise, you would call this what it is. It's a rebuild. And you would have taken some steps towards rebuilding. But instead of doing that, you decided to kind of take those steps at the trade deadline, right? You more or less blew it up at the trade deadline. And then in the summer, you spent almost up to the new cap on grinders, on plugs, on fourth line guys. That's not committing to anything. They want you to believe that the Bruins organization commits to excellence. That used to be the case. Right now, that's all bullshit. And yeah, it's just a little letter on the sweater. But that is just another shining example of we don't know what the hell we're doing here. We won't commit to anything. Those other teams that don't have captains, other than Tampa, they're committing to something. It's not what you want, but those teams are all rebuilding, all of them. They're tanking. They're doing it. They're getting high draft picks. The Bruins don't want to do anything. They want to maybe push all their chips into the middle for, again, just one season to maybe try and make a run at the playoffs. Rather than just calling this what it is. Look, we got a prospect in the top 10 of the draft last year. We really don't have enough talent here to feasibly believe that we're going to be in the postseason. Why don't we just do it again? Why don't we just have another bad year, get another top pick? We've got 4 first-round picks in the last 2 years because of cleaning house. Let's make those picks the best that we can. And instead, like a captain, like a coach's philosophy, like a direction for the franchise, they can't commit. They can't commit to anything. That's what I'll remember from the Don Sweeney era. They just kept spinning wheels because they couldn't commit to a damn thing. Peter Chiarelli, shoot, man, criticize him all you want. Committed to something. Sometimes it wasn't always the best thing, but the team's always won. It just sucks, man. No wonder why Brad Marchand wanted out of here. It's going to continue if they have another season like last year. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Is this a bigger deal than some of us make it out to be, that the Boston Bruins don't have a captain this year? How do you think they should handle this year? What is the direction this team should be going in? Let me know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you think that Don Sweeney gives this team no damn direction. We're talking Bruins every single weekday and everything else going on in the world of Boston sports that you don't have to listen to Boston Sports Talk Radio. I'm Cam Stewart, your alternative to Boston Sports Talk Radio. That's why it's called The Cam Show. Zach Burke is behind the glass, keeping us on the air every weekday, live on YouTube, noon Eastern time. So if you're here, get in the comment section, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check out the other videos on the channel, talking Bruins, Red Sox, everything else going on in the world of Boston sports.